Hi guys, it's Pastor Ken here, and welcome to Every Nation Melbourne, our online service, and we are continuing our series called Prophetic. And the big idea behind this series is that we as a people who love God, we as people who acknowledge Jesus as King and are following Him into His new creation and into His mission, that we have an identity. And part of that identity is that we are a prophetic people. We have a prophetic identity. And that prophetic identity that we have reflects God's prophetic identity. Basically, our prophetic identity flows from the heart of God, God's heart, His desire to confront evil, His desire to stop exploitation, and His desire to bring comfort. Basically, wherever there is injustice taking place, God is wanting to raise up a people and say, hey, that is wrong. And so, and there's brokenness everywhere, right? And so maybe just a quick recap of what we've gone through so far. Basically, we see that our prophetic identity comes from the second part of our story. In Every Nation Melbourne, we teach that there's 5 parts to God's story. The first part being creation, the second part being rebellion. Basically, God made everything perfect, particularly relationships, and He made human beings in His image to represent Him. But what happens is that human beings, rather than just being made in the image of God, they want to be God, and they rebel against Him. And so God, His prophetic heart, He confronts that rebellion, and from His prophetic heart, He gives a prophetic word, and He gives the first prophecy ever, which is Genesis chapter 3, verse 15, where He prophesies that the seed of the woman will crush the head of the snake, will defeat the serpent. And so from this, we see just what it means to have a prophetic identity, because it flows from God, but also that our prophetic identity precedes our prophetic gift. So, in the Every Nation world, obviously we talk a lot about the prophetic gift, which is important, but our prophetic identity needs to precede even our prophetic gift. And so, and in the second week, we've seen that all humans, we're born with a prophetic impulse. Some of us are very good at squashing it and ignoring it, but people, even who don't know God, will look at the world and say things are wrong. Hey, that's wrong, you need to stop that. But there's a problem. Rebellious humans trying to stop evil resort to using evil, and just makes the situation worse. For instance, the case in point is Moses. Moses, before he becomes the archetypal prophet of the Hebrew Bible, and he has a prophetic impulse, right? He sees exploitation taking place. The people of God, the Hebrews, are enslaved in Egypt, and their slave masters are treating them badly. And Moses sees this, hey, that's wrong. But because he tries to confront evil apart from God, he resorts to using evil. Before Moses was the archetypal prophet of the Hebrew Bible, he was a murderer. He murders the slave master in Egypt. God can use murderers. Obviously, God used Moses. And we see that God has a prophetic heart. That's what we looked at in our third week. At the burning bush and at Mount Sinai, Moses learns that God has a prophetic heart. And by prophetic heart, it means that God cares. God cares, and He is compassionate, and He wants to bring comfort. And so at the burning bush, God says to Moses, I have heard the cry of my people, and I'm sending you to minister to them. And on Mount Sinai, when God meets with Moses receives the 10 Commandments. And the 10 Commandments aren't just laws for us to follow. The 10 Commandments are basically God's expression of His heart for us, that we would stop being exploited and that we would stop exploiting other people. Not only does God reveal to Moses His prophetic heart, last week we saw that God has a prophetic name. God reveals His name to Moses first at the burning bush encounter. Moses says to God, whom shall I say sent me? God says His name, Yahweh, I am sent you. And then in Exodus chapter 34, verses 6 and 7, God goes into greater detail, greater depth about what His prophetic name is all about. I am, Yahweh. I am compassionate, I am gracious, I'm slow to anger, I'm full of love and faithfulness. I forgive wickedness, rebellion, and sin, but I don't let the guilty go unpunished. And we saw that tension, right? That tension between God's desire for compassion and grace and mercy, being slow to anger, but also His desire for justice, and how ultimately that tension is resolved in Jesus Himself. But that brings us up to today, and there's one real key that unlocks the prophetic identity in people. in God's people, and that is lament. So this idea that we're meant to actually be moved and be sad by the brokenness around us. The great skill that unleashes our prophetic identity is lament. We as human beings, we're designed by God. We're actually meant to be saddened. It's okay to be sad. We're actually meant to get angry. Those are emotions that sometimes we try to push away. But biblically speaking, we are meant to be sad and angry when things are not the way they should be. So some people might look at sadness or anger and say, oh, that's sinful. Actually, no, that's God's design for us to respond to things being broken. The world was never meant to be the way that it is, and to look at the way the world is right now and say, hey, everything's fine, everything's okay, that's just, or to not even care. Well, apathy is actually the real sin. Not lament and grief, that's not sinful. But it's just so interesting that in our modern world here in Melbourne, we've become so good, and in our society and culture at large, as well as inside the church. So outside the church in Melbourne, as well as inside in the church in Melbourne, we're so good at numbing our feelings. It's so good to pretend that everything. We're so good at pretending everything's okay. We got to put on our facade. We got to put on the happy face. We got to fake it till we make it. And while there's some truth in all of that, what is more fundamentally true is that lament and grief at the brokenness in us, in our church, in the world, it's meant to make us sad. It's meant to make us grieve. It's meant to make us lament. Lament, well, before I get into that, I mean, just think of everything that the world throws at us to numb our feelings. All of the busyness, all the things we try to fit into our schedule, all of the amusements, all of the new Netflix series or Amazon Prime series or whatever, Apple Plus or Disney Plus, or Apple TV, not Disney Plus, all of these streaming series that we can binge, or all the little things that we can buy on online shopping to try and to numb ourselves from feeling actually what we're designed to feel. So lament and grief, lament in particular, this idea being the key to unlocking our prophetic identity, lament and grief in relationship with God, it gives way to imagination. Lament and grief in relationship with God, it gives birth to a prophetic imagination. And so I want to use that phrase in particular, the prophetic imagination, because it's the title of a book by Walter Bruggerman, which has really informed a lot of this talk about this whole series, basically. So if you want to go even deeper, then look up online Walter Bruggerman, the prophetic imagination. But a prophetic imagination basically is a view into the way that the world could be. If we lament, we start to thinking there must be, I see all this brokenness around me, it makes me sad, I'm grieving, in fact I'm getting a little bit angry about it, all of this injustice, all of this exploitation, surely there must be something better. And we start to think, God, is there a different way to live our lives? Is there a different way to order our society? Is there a different way for me to relate to money or to power or to sexuality or whatever it is that can bring greater freedom and flourishing to people all around me, as well as myself? There must be something more. Show me, God. So when we lament and grieve the brokenness in the world with God, and we are in dialogue with God, He opens up our imagination to see the way things should be. Ken, it was never meant to be this way. Let me show you the way the world could be. Let me stimulate your imagination to see what your role in fixing everything that's been broken can be. I mean, that's amazing. A prophetic imagination is a view into the way the world could be. A prophetic imagination is a view into the way the world should be. The world should be different. And we can play a part in that. Lament not only gives birth to a prophetic imagination, lament gives birth to intimacy with God. So if you think about relationships, any relationship, one of the keys is being emotionally authentic with one another. Emotional authenticity feeds relationships between humans. Emotional authenticity feeds our relationship between us and God. We shouldn't let God know that we're feeling sad, that what we're reading about in the news is making us sad, about the political situation in that part of the world or what's happening in Afghanistan. And we should complain to God. God, why is this happening? God, I'm grieving what's going on here. I don't understand why you would let this happen. Emotional authenticity feeds our intimacy with God. And our desperation, if our lament causes us to be desperate, it means that we start to focus on our relationship with God. God, there's this thing that's happening in my workplace. There's this boss that's creating this toxic work culture, and I don't know what to do, and it's taking a toll on me, and I just don't know what to do, God. But all I know is that all I have is you. And in that moment of desperation, that lament leading to desperation, it feeds our reliance, our hunger for God. It builds greater intimacy with God. Lament, when it's done with God, gives birth to imagination. And we touched on that already a little bit. Lament gives birth to imagination or possibility. It's like, God, all this stuff that's happening, there must be a better way. But this is, I suppose, the crux of it, and thank God that lament gives way to prophetic imagination. Thank God that lament gives way to intimacy with God. Thank God for all of that. But lament ultimately gives birth to comfort. Lament gives birth to comfort. When my kids are complaining, when my kids have been hurt physically or emotionally, and they come to me or to Kira, probably they mostly go to Kira, but sometimes they come to me. When my kids come to me in their lament, in their grief, what's my response? My response is to comfort them. And that's why we, as followers of Jesus, that's why we as Christians, we should be good at lamenting. We should let the stuff around the world make us feel something. So often we try to put on that religious facade. Oh, no, everything's okay. No, I saw this story about domestic violence on the news last night, and it's making me really sad. And I'm starting to. I just need to vent to God about how I'm feeling. That should be what's happening in our lives. We should allow the brokenness around us, the things that we see taking place in our neighborhood, the things that we see taking place in the news, the things that we see taking place in our workplace or on the campus, that should make us feel something. That should make us feel sad. That should make us grieve. That should cause us to lament to God. Because God will comfort us in that. And in God comforting us in that situation, He will open up an imagination for us, a prophetic imagination, saying, you know what? Something can be done about this. I want you to do it, Ken. I've comforted you. Now, with the comfort that you have received, go and comfort those who are being exploited. Lament gives birth to comfort. I mean, we read about this, right? When Moses encountered God at the burning bush, God reveals His prophetic heart, and He says, I have heard the cries of my people, and I have compassion for them. Or when Moses hears God's prophetic name, going into depth at the second encounter on Mount Sinai, what's the first attribute that God reveals about Himself? I am compassionate. I am compassion. I am the one who brings comfort. Lament gives birth to comfort. It's amazing that the Western Church, I don't know how this happened. I don't know how this happened. I've probably got some ideas. If you want to, you can talk to me about it in private if you like, but it's amazing that the Western Church has thrown away the key to our prophetic identity. We don't lament very well. If lament was a muscle on our body, it's the one that we haven't exercised. We might trot it out at a funeral, which of course is appropriate, but lament biblically is so much more than just when someone passes away. Lament and grief should be because of the brokenness that we see in the world. I mean, what is a funeral but the ultimate brokenness that comes from human rebellion leading to death? You know, humans weren't meant to die, right? But human brokenness there's so many more steps before it gets to death, and that should cause us to lament and grieve as well. And when I think about the fact that the Western Church has thrown away the key to its prophetic identity, the muscle of lamenting, I think how we've been ripped off. Something's been stolen from us. We got cheated somehow. We've looked for comfort in other things. We've looked for comfort in things. We've looked for comfort, and instead of the godly lament about the brokenness of the world, leading us to God and deepening our relationship with Him, and then us receiving comfort from God. Instead of that process, which we were designed for, now we have a process where we feel a bit sad and we go buy something. We feel a bit sad and we order a meal off Uber Eats, or we feel a bit sad and we look for comfort in money or status or religious activity instead of the comfort that comes from God. The comfort that comes from God is infinitely and eternally deeper and greater and more powerful than the comfort that can be supplied by anything else. Let me read to you from Micah, one of the prophets of the Hebrew Bible, from verse 6. Micah chapter 6, verse 6 to 12. With what shall I come before the Lord and bow down before the exalted God? Shall I come before him with burnt offerings, with calves a year old? Would the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams, with 10,000 rivers of olive oil? Shall I offer my firstborn for my transgression, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? He has shown you, O mortal, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? To act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. Listen, the Lord is calling to the city, and to fear your name is wisdom. Heed the rod and the one who appointed it. Am I still to forget your ill-gotten treasures, you wicked house, and the short ephah which is accursed? Shall I acquit someone with dishonest scales, with a bag of false weights? You rich people are violent, your inhabitants are liars, and their tongues speak deceitfully. Here is the prophet's lament. Here he's speaking on behalf of God, but it is the prophet's lament. Israel, through their religious activity, Israel thought that their religious activity was what God wanted. And the prophet is going, do you think God wants your sacrifice? Do you think God wants your worship? Do you think God needs your sacrifice and your worship? Your offerings? You think you're right with God, even though you're doing all these other things. You're cheating each other. The rich are oppressing the poor. Everyone's deceiving their neighbors. There's all this exploitation and brokenness that's going on in your society, but you think we're good because you bring an offering, you sing a praise song. God tells them what he wants through the prophet Micah. God wanted them to walk in their prophetic identity. God wanted them to be faithful to his prophetic heart, to stop exploiting others. The prophet Micah lamented what Israel had become. He wasn't trying to pretend that everything was okay. In fact, if you please read the book of Micah, it's 7 chapters. You can read it in 15 to 20 minutes. Read through it all. You'll read a story about how there's false prophets who, what they're saying is everything's okay. What is the sign of a false prophet? Someone who doesn't lament. Someone who says everything's okay. Peace and security when there is no peace or security. That's from Jeremiah. But the same was happening in the time of Micah. God's on our side. Look how he's blessing us economically. Micah lamented what Israel had become. And he wasn't pretending that everything was okay. He had a prophetic imagination. Because of his lament, it gave birth to a prophetic imagination that things could be better. That Israel could do more than just give an offering to God. That Israel could do more than just sing praise songs. That Israel could do justice, could love mercy, and could walk humbly with their God. I wonder if that could be said of us. Can we be a church that more than just sings songs, more than just has messages that we listen to, more that we could actually be a people that do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with our God. Can we imagine who we can be, Every Nation Melbourne? Can we lament maybe the areas that we're weak in and say, God, who are you calling us to be? What's ironic about Israel that Micah is lamenting is that they were too distracted. They distracted themselves with money and politics. And because of that, justice would come. They wouldn't be the ones doing justice. Justice would be done to them. Israel would be destroyed. The prophet laments what Israel had become. The prophet laments the destruction of Israel. But remember that lament leads to comfort. Lament gives birth to comfort. That's why it's the key to unlocking our prophetic identity. We need to be a people that stop numbing ourselves and feel again what God feels. Remember that lament leads to comfort, not because it's some kind of formula, but because of who God is. The next chapter, Micah chapter 7, the last 3 verses of the book. So verse 18, it says this: Who is a God like you, who pardons sin and forgives the transgressions of the remnant of his inheritance? You do not stay angry forever, but you delight to show mercy. You will again have compassion on us. You will tread our sins underfoot and hurl our iniquities into the depths of the sea. You will be faithful to Jacob and show love to Abraham, as you pledged an oath to our ancestors in days long ago. Micah 7, 18-20, it's alluding directly back to the prophetic name of God in Exodus chapter 34, verse 6 and 7. The words of forgiving sin and transgression, the words of not staying angry forever, or being slow to anger, delighting to show mercy, having compassion, all of this, it's the prophetic name of God being shown again. God wants to comfort his people. Lament leads to comfort. The lament of the prophet Micah leads to the comfort of the prophet Micah. Leads to the comfort of the people of Israel. I love that. The whole point of being a people who lament, to unlock a prophetic identity, is that we feel what God feels. And we express that to him. And then he shows us what can be different and how it can be different through us. So just as we wrap up here, Every Nation Melbourne, here's a question for us. Can we be a people who lament? Can we be a people who see the brokenness around us instead of being numb to it or distracting ourselves from it, the brokenness that we see in our workplace or our apartment complex, our neighborhoods or on the campus, that rather than just going, oh, you know what, I'm just going to ignore it. I don't care about it. Can we be a people instead that feel it, grieve it, lament it, take that lament to God, and allow him to let it bring a prophetic imagination, to allow him to let it bring a deep comfort to us? Can we be a people who lament? Can we allow the brokenness in the world to touch us? It's so easy to harden our hearts. It's so easy to become desensitized. It's so easy to be distracted with the pleasures of our modern world that our modern world has to offer, or to look the other way, getting busy, giving to God what he hasn't asked of us. Now, Israel in Micah's day, they gave so much to God. God said, I didn't want that. I didn't ask you for that. I asked you to do justice. I asked you to love mercy. I asked you to walk humbly with me. Can we be a people who lament? Lament gives birth to imagination, prophetic imagination. Can we be a people that imagine? Can we be a people that imagine that maybe there's more to living life in the 21st century than this? Is there more to life than this? Is there more to economic flourishing than crony capitalism, political lobbying? Is there more to human flourishing in the workplace than simply clocking in and clocking out? Is there more to the relationships around us than, just social media? Is there more to human interaction than social media? Is there a solution, perhaps? Is there a solution perhaps to the domestic violence problem? Is there a solution to the homelessness situation? Is there a world we can see, that we can imagine as we grieve to God, all the brokenness in the world? Is there a world that we can imagine where humans bless the environment instead of exploiting it? Can we be a people who know the name of our God? I am compassionate and gracious, slow to anger, full of loving kindness and mercy, forgiving the wicked, rebellious and sinful, and by no means letting the guilty go unpunished. Can we be a people who know the name of our God and be comforted by Him? When my kids come to me with their grief, as a father, I comfort them. How much more when we, maybe it's our personal grief. Of course, let's come to God with our personal grief. I'm not just saying it's the grief of things that are out there in the world. It's our personal grief. Let's bring it to God. The things that are going wrong in our lives, let's bring it to God. He will comfort us. But at the same time, as we bring our own personal grief, can we look at the brokenness in the world and let that make us feel something? It shouldn't be that way. I'm saddened, God, by the hurt that humans do to each other. I cry, God, at the exploitation that humans do against each other, the crimes we commit against each other, the way we treat the environment. God, it makes me sad. It makes me angry. I bring it to you. So as we bring our personal lament, as we bring the lament that is generated by the brokenness in the world around us, God wants to comfort us. Can we be a people who know the name of our God and be comforted by Him? I think God is wanting to say to us, let me comfort you, Every Nation Melbourne. Let me comfort you, Every Nation Melbourne, because I want you to comfort this city. Can we know what it feels like to be comforted by God so that we can bring that same comfort to those around us? The city of Melbourne that we are called to love our neighbours as ourselves. The city of Melbourne that we're called to love, it needs your lament. It needs your grief. The city needs you to imagine a different way, a better way, a prophetic imagination. This city needs you to lament, to imagine, to experience God's comfort so that it can be comforted by you. Maybe the picture of the city needing this is too big. Maybe for you it's your school. Maybe for you it's your university or your neighborhood or your workplace. Your workplace needs you to lament. Your neighbors need you to lament. Your workplace, your neighbors, they need you to have your prophetic imagination unlocked. Your workplace, your neighbors, they need you to be comforted by God as you feel the pain of the brokenness around you. So as you are comforted by God, that you can comfort others. This reminds me of a man called Jesus and a sermon that he gave on a mount. And he listed a whole bunch of people that were blessed. And this is what Jesus says. Matthew 5 verse 4, blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Let me just tweak it a little bit, doing no violence to the translation. Blessed are those who lament, for they shall be comforted. Do you want to be blessed, Every Nation Melbourne? Do you want to see the city blessed, Every Nation Melbourne? Blessed are those who lament, for they shall be comforted. It all comes back to Jesus. He ties it all together. It always comes back to Jesus. He will comfort us. He will go with us by His Spirit as we leave lockdown. We're out of lockdown. And as we go back into the city that needs comforting. How much comforting does this city need after 260 plus days of lockdown? How much? A lot. Now we can grieve the lockdown process. We can grieve all the businesses that have been doing it tough. We can lament that, be comforted by that, so that we can bring comfort to a city that needs the comfort of the God who loves them, who has a plan and a purpose and imagines a future so much greater and fulfilling, full of flourishing than they could possibly expect. So let me pray into that. Jesus, thank you so much. It does always come back to you. Thank you, Jesus. You said it yourself, blessed are those who lament, for they shall be comforted. And God, I pray to lament or to mourn means that you have to feel. We have to open up your heart. God, give us soft hearts. Give us sensitive hearts. Lord, not just about our personal feelings or our own reputations individually, but actually soft hearts and sensitive hearts for others, God, out there who are being exploited, who are being victimized, who are being shamed by structures and people and all sorts of just obstacles in their lives, God. Help us to feel for them. Help us to cry for them, God. Help us to get angry on their behalf, Jesus, and to lament to you. And then, God, as we do that, I pray that you would give birth to an imagination inside of us, a prophetic imagination that says, this is not the way it should be. This is not the way it's meant to be. There's a way it could be. There's a way, in fact, that you say, God, it must be. And it is actually about seeing people set free so that they can worship you. Lord, I pray that you would help us to feel and to open up our hearts and to be moved by you, God. And to bring those feelings, as complicated as they are, to you. So you can open up our prophetic imagination so that you can comfort us. Because Jesus, you said, blessed are those who lament, for they shall be comforted. And the comfort that we receive, God, I pray that we would take that very same comfort and be able to offer it to a city that needs it so desperately. Lord, we love you. We love you, Jesus. Help us, I pray, not just to distract ourselves anymore, or to numb ourselves, or to wallow in apathy, but to unlock the key to our prophetic identity, the lament you're calling us to bring to you. In your name we pray, Jesus. We give you all the glory. Amen. Well, guys, that's it from me. I'm Pastor Ken. As always, be blessed.